Pacha!
It's like I'm walking on sunshine.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to... Go ahead, turn it down. Welcome to DoomCast number 8. I am Charlie McGrath, joined by co-founder, co-host, and my friend Doug Owen on this 18th day of September, Wednesday. We kick off DoomCast number 8. Again, I want to start the program by thanking all the people who have downloaded, watched the YouTube video. Stop it, Owen.
My bad.
Finger happy, Owen. Finger happy, Doug.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
That is my co-host, co-founder of DoomCast, Doug Owen, also the base founder. That's what they say in RT. Base founder of blacklistednews.com. As we roll into yet another week, yet another DoomCast. Topics for tonight's discussion are, and here's what I've written down so far. Here's the thing, Doug. I've decided that I get annoyed when hosts of radio programs or whatever say, "Oh, man, there's a plethora of stuff to talk about. There's so many things to talk about," because it just leaves the audience wondering what the hell they're going to talk about.
It's true.
And
I do that.
Yeah, I do it too. I'm calling myself out because I'm very notorious for saying, "Oh, so much to cover. Let's get into it." But you know what? Here's the deal. We all know that we picked a couple topics to talk about. And I want the audience to know beforehand. So here we go. DC shooting. That is what I've got written down as number 1. Lots to talk about on that topic. We're going to get into that in a minute. I have, and I know we've talked about it multiple Doomcasts in a row, but I have a question about Syria that is perplexing to me, about something the mainstream establishment media, something about your coworker isn't asking. And it's a great big duh moment when you hear this question. And then Doug Owen gave me organic stuff that he wants to talk about. So we're going to talk about DC shooting, Syria, and organic stuff. Obviously, the dragnet there is organic stuff because that could be anything and everything. Some of them pretty gross.
Oh, well, yeah. There's a lot of things that are happening that are pretty foul.
Organic.
And very organic. Yeah, that's one of the things about it. When you look at organic matter, it is stinky. It's something that most people don't want to deal with. But when looking at a lot of these topics, I mean, there's so many stories. Just to kind of speak to what you were saying.
Hey. We're not doing the so many stories thing.
So many stories, so many places. Who knows?
I don't know where to start.
You don't know? Well, we can start with the shooting.
Let's start with the shooting.
That has derailed the conversation. It's out in front and center, and
sir.
It's gone through a lot of morphing over the last few days, and the politicization of the event by everyone has been pretty foul and stench-filled. I think, unfortunately...
The whoring out of the death of 13 people is another way to look at it, but please continue. I interrupted you.
Well, and of course, the impact that the media has on focusing and really glorifying, I think, in a lot of ways, these actions by providing what a lot of people, unfortunately, maybe the majority of people want to know, and that is, to psychoanalyze the killer. We were talking about this before the show, the fact that if you look at it proportionally, the story itself, 13 people being shot over a weekend in Chicago, not unusual. The president doesn't talk about it. Rahm Emanuel doesn't even get a lot of flack in the media for that. Definitely not the daily type that he was, supposedly, all of that mithra. But, the fact of the matter is that there's so many other things that are really more likely to kill you. One of the stories that came out today, 23,000 people die each and every year from infectious diseases, and due to the amount of antibiotics that we eat on a daily basis, and probably many other contributing factors, but one of which being, that we We eat some pretty foul food, and
Sure.
the fact of the matter is, you're way more likely to be killed by produce that comes from China or God only knows where, your local grocery store, than you are to be killed by a terrorist or a lone gunman nut or in some other fantastical scenario that the media portrays primarily.
Let's look at some of these, Doug. Seriously, I was doing the program the other day, and the producer Brett sent me an article because I had done a piece, an RT piece, talking about just this, and that was fresh. I mean, it was the day of, and their media, just like our media, and not certainly not as canned and not as plastic, and they're not afraid to touch on what our media, I believe, considers taboo topics, but they're about shock and awe and sensationalism, and of course the questions of what do you think the motive was? Well, how the hell do you know? I mean, we still don't know. Who knows what the motive is? But the simple fact was, I tried to drive home, is we got a nation of 310 million people, Doug Owen, and in a population of any size, right? Aren't you going to have wackos? And you can't profile these people. You can't predict what they're going to do. I mean, that is the nature of insanity, is they're freaking insane. So they're going to go off the rails at times. But I did go to Mother Jones and look at, pulled some interesting statistics. From 2000 until 2013, 321 people have been killed in what is dubbed mass shootings. 321 people over 13 years. Now, you talk about produce and other things that are day-to-day lives that kill us. Some of the most bizarre, obscure statistics that I've found that have been given to me way outpace the odds, or way outpace the number of people who are killed in mass shootings. And we'll pull these off of this article during the program tonight. But falling out of bed in the United States of America kills 450 people a year, not over 13, every single year.
Right.
Now, you talk about where's Rob Emanuel, where's Obama, about the mass murders that happen in Chicagoland every single weekend. Well, where's the outrage from Congress over the beds? The beds are killing 450 people a year. Where's the limitation on the size of the bed, the height of the bed, the density of a bed, where a bed can be used? Where's the bed-free zones? Where's the safety net for the beds out there? Because they're butchering people 10 times as much as mass shootings are, Doug Owen.
Well, I imagine a lot of those people are probably really, really old, or are debilitated in some
or really, really young,
fashion.
having fun,
or very young and just
having
roll
fun
off the bed.
No. I'm talking.
But you really hit the nail on the head. It shows you how statistics can be used in almost any form or fashion to drive home a point and to push an agenda, and that's what we have here. I mean, the AK-47, AR-15. I heard both of those being reported initially, and turns out it was a shotgun. Joe Biden says we can have a shotgun. Says you should protect yourself with a shotgun, but you don't need a militarized weapon. So Dianne Feinstein, she's going to eat little crow, and I don't have the crow sound effect. I should have. I thought about that too. I was like, I need to put the crow sound effect in the soundboard, and
it's pretty haunting. It's pretty haunting.
I did not, because she's probably eating crow because of that. But the story's changed so much. The one thing that I think that they've been very effective at pushing is that we need a universal background check. We need to get the crazies away from the guns. And I agree to a certain extent, but who's the arbiter? And in a society when we have that, I believe that we do need less crazy people with weapons. But wait a minute. Wait a minute.
I want to break that down a little, because this might be a bone of contention between you and I, Doug Owen.
Well, let me explain though before, and then I'll let you retort, and then you can tell me if you do have a bone, and then you can pick it. You can pick it, Mr. McGrath.
Pick your bone.
So, the government would do a horrible job at regulating that, and the government determining and making that determining factor maybe something that prohibits you. Now, I completely believe that felons should be able to own firearms. I believe that they are not only a tool for people's livelihood, the ability to feed your family. You can do that with a gun. I don't think that there's anything in the Constitution that says that a person that by modern standards is a felon. They didn't even have felonies back then. Should not be able to have a firearm. So people have gone much farther. And so when it comes to the Second Amendment, I am really a purist. I go back pre-Reagan, pre-Watts riots, the first comp out by the NRA, and I believe that anybody should be able to own a firearm. And in saying that, I think that we would weed out a lot of the idiocy that you see in places like Chicagoland, that you don't see in suburban Texas, where I live, in Central Texas. You just don't see that idiocy. And people shoot, the crazy people. You don't have a victim society. So I agree that I wish crazy people couldn't get weapons, but really it's about the drugs that have been. And this is what the media is not talking about, because when you turn on the television, everything is a drug commercial. Yes. And they're not going to talk about it. You can even find, talk radio, some hosts discussing it. That's a breath of fresh air, because that's really what it's about. But I think that we have to drive home the point that the government, can't arbitrarily decide who should have a gun and who shouldn't. And once you go down that road, who knows where you end up? Yeah.
No, I agree with that. But how does that square with maybe I misunderstood you, and let me ask you if I did first, because I thought you started this by saying that the government should try to keep it out of the hands.
No. I was just saying, wouldn't it be nice if they could? What if that was their job, and they did that efficiently and kept crazy people? If they did that correctly, and we believe that Dianne Feinstein could, let's all just pretend for a moment that the government actually
way back music.
Yeah. That the government could actually do that, then it would be okay. And that's what they claim to be doing. And so many people out there, let's be honest, morons, people that don't have a lot of brain cells, they buy it because they don't do any research or investigation. They just, just kind of take things at face value. So.
Yeah. Well, and okay, then I did misunderstand. I was looking for an argument. I'm not going to get it, because I agree with you that.
But see, when I say those things, people are like, "Oh, I hate you, Doug Owen." I'm like, "No, hear me out.
I'm here to clear the deck for you. I'm here to let the point be not as muddled as it was a minute ago. So there it is. Your point is.
That's why I enrage people, because I would have gone on a long diatribe, and people are like, "Oh, Doug Owen, your podcast. It infuriates me.
You dirty scoundrel."
But if you
listen to me. Here's what I'm going to say about that, and it might make some people mad. So I want to preface it. I want to preface myself with this. Look, if a family member of mine, a friend, a loved one, was involved in this, then guess what? It is the biggest deal in the world. There's nothing that could be more devastating than to go to work one day and get a phone call because your loved one is involved and killed in a mass shooting. I get it. For these people, it is, in some cases, literally the end of the world. And for the survivors, it's decades and decades of grief and pain and suffering. And my heart goes out to them. But we have to use perspective. And perspective demands us to look at statistics. And statistics tell us this. It's almost as if they don't even happen, because it's in such a large population, 300 million, 310 million, and the numbers are so infinitesimally small compared to that population, for us to be willing to even discuss the option of perhaps even maybe altering our nation-forming constitution because of these events is beyond ludicrous. One more statistic that I want to share with the folks. Icicles. I'm in Montana.
I'm very scared of icicles, by the way.
You ought to be. Nancy Pelosi ought to be on the stump right now talking about how we need to ban icicles because 100 people are killed every single year by icicles. They're dangerous, man.
Yeah.
Get them out of there. So when you start to put this into perspective,
we need an awareness campaign and maybe some ice-free or icicle-free zones where they can't exist.
That's right. I want to move to where there's no beds and no icicles so far. So I don't know where that's at, but maybe
South
Tora
America,
Bora.
maybe somewhere.
I'm thinking Tora Bora.
That's
Tora
nice.
Bora, no icicles, no. Well, they might have ice there in the dead. I don't think they have water. It's a really dry climate. But you're talking about areas, Texas, and I looked down my list here to see if Texas was involved. Since this is a list of mass shootings, and as Gary Hendershot and I had a conversation the other day, I didn't know how to really define a mass shooting. I'm assuming it's a shooting that is random in nature. It's not a love or a hate or because you're jealous or rage thing, other than you're just psychotic. So since 2000, I'm looking at this list here. And Texas is not on the list. But you know what I see a lot on this list? I see areas that are the strongest gun control legislation in the nation. California, New York, Washington, Connecticut, Colorado, at least in Jeffco, Jefferson County. Again, California, Connecticut again, Washington again. Oh, here's a Texas, Fort Hood, obviously. Yeah,
well,
obviously.
it kind of originated here. Charles Whitman, UT Tower.
Yeah, well, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, that was back in '66. That was the very first one that we saw in the United States, or at least in the 20th century domestically. That we remember, because if you go back, just into the late 1800s, early 1900s, there were anarchists bombing the government and blowing up houses. It was pretty freaking brutal. And how quickly we forget how mob politics ruled the day. I've just been going back and listening to some historical perspectives and going back through early U.S. history, and it's amazing how much violence and anarchy and all of the wussified stuff that we get from schooling is pretty. It doesn't do justice to the I think awesome history of this country. Uh-oh.
Whoa.
Uh-oh.
Whoa.
Somebody got a tail in the door, I think, over there.
Oh,
no.
The Doom pup. Oh.
Chili dog, come here. Are you okay?
every other program, this poor beast is going through some kind of turmoil. And that leads me to the next statistic, and this might explain it, because the sheer terror that I see the Doom dog go through, I can kind of understand the next statistic. Dogs kill, in the United States of America, dogs kill 34 people annually, right? Every single year, 10 more people are killed by dogs than they are by mass murders or mass shootings on average. Mm-hmm. So, again, where is the outrage? Where is the legislation in order to rid us of this menace?
Well, because there's no money in ridding you of that menace. It doesn't facilitate the police state or giving money to your local politicians and turning all of your parks into prisons and FEMA camps. It doesn't facilitate any of those things, Charlie McGrath.
Rid us of the menace.
Yeah, you always have to have that external enemy.
Rid us of the menace of dogs, rid us of the menace of icicles, rid us of the menace of beds.
Let's be honest, it's just not sexy. It doesn't sell.
No. Well, okay, I got one that's sexy for you, Doug Owen.
Okay, thank you.
Auto asphyxiation. Right?
That's a good one. Yeah. How many people die is this just in the United States of America, or is this globally?
This one I'm not clear, because it doesn't say if it's globally
we
or
need illumination.
Yeah. Well, here's a number. It's 600. So I'm going to assume 600 people, 310 million. It's probably the U.S. But don't hold me to that as factual.
Okay.
But for those of you who don't know about autoerotica asphyxiation, it's basically the act of choking yourself by one form or another while masturbating, leading to an exhilarating orgasm, apparently.
Or to a David Carradine-like fate.
Yes. Or to a statistical embarrassment.
Well, it's something. But here's the thing, okay? You're much more likely to have problems in later life with this than you would with many other things. Should we start teaching our kids in kindergarten about autoerotica? There's somebody out there that's saying, yeah, that's a great idea, Doug Owen. That's what we should do. That's what we should do. Speaking of, I don't know if you heard this or saw this, but there's these books at your general education. actually high school AP history books that kids are actually getting in this country. It's pretty piss poor. They've not only mangled the Second Amendment, but they screwed up the First, the Third, and the Fifth. But listen to this, okay? Tell me if this sounds right to you. This is the Second Amendment according to what your son may be learning in school. The people have the right to keep and bear arms in a state militia. Now, does that sound like the Second Amendment that was actually put into the Bill of Rights?
No.
to you
no,
at
in
all?
fact, no, not at all. Not at all. And in fact, I don't have my copy of my Constitution in front of me.
I've got a pocket Constitution.
Well,
right
if
within my
memory serves,
yes.
If memory serves, that you know what? I'm trying to remember the exact phrasing of it, but a militia becomes before a right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Right.
Right.
They don't even have the word infringed in here. So,
yeah.
Really,
well, it's not unlike
that they, here's the thing. It's not that it's that long. It's not that it's so many sentences that you couldn't just put it on the piece of paper. There's no reason to abbreviate. And maybe this is benign, but it shows you how little. At bare minimum, it shows you how little they care about keeping the historical context.
I think it's all conditioning. I think it's all conditioning.
I do.
The right, you can keep and bear arms. Why don't they just say, if you're a good little citizen bot, right, then you can keep and bear arms. If there's any, and this brings me back because something you said about psychotropics, prescription drugs. This is the nexus. I hate that word. In the corporate world, they use that word all the time. The nexus. We have a good nexus, a good synergy.
Yeah.
So anyway, here's a nexus that bothers me. You have a very strong push by officials, we'll call them so-called officials, to get the government's nose into every aspect of our life. And obviously, on the heels of this shooting, it is the Second Amendment and the right to keep and bear arms. Now, they're very well-meaning in the way they present this, right? They try to sound well-meaning, and they'll say things like, "Well, people on psychotropic drugs, people who are have mental illness, and monitoring this, and keeping these weapons and guns out of the hands of these people." But what is forgotten in all this is the absolute horrifying numbers of people in this country who are on prescription drugs. And I'm here to tell you, I'm not pointing a finger and saying, you bad people out there on these prescription drugs and you're going to be deemed crazy.
Right.
I think that's going to happen. But look, even myself, right? About my, and a lot of the audience that listens to Wide Awake News Radio knows about my 2-year ordeal with acute sinusitis and sinus surgery and reconstructive surgery on my nose from boxing when I was younger, a very, very broken up, deviated septum.
So not like a Michael Jackson freakish thing going on over there?
Not that bad. I mean,
I'm just making sure.
I mean, just because I know, what autoerotic asphyxiation is doesn't mean I participate in such things.
Right.
However, I did go through this surgery and the recovery period, and it was horrific. I mean, it was over a year in recovery, and in fact, I'm still in recovery period. But in that amount of time, the onslaught began of drugs, and some of them are absolute. I'm not necessarily one of these people that say, "Oh, these prescription drugs are bad," because I don't believe that. However, the motivation for doctors to prescribe is overwhelming. I have a very good friend, close friend, who's been an office manager for 20 years for different doctors and different clinics. And some of these guys are 6 figures just in their prescription kickbacks. So there's a very, very big motivator for these doctors to prescribe. And there's a very big motivator for getting the information out about drugs. That's why you see nonstop commercial on TV. However, one of them right now I'm thinking of that I was on, dexamethasone. Dexamethasone is a steroid. Like I said, my sinus situation was really bad.
Wow.
And the
sorry to hear that, Charlie.
Doug Owen, it's okay. I'm getting better. I'm gonna draw it back. I feel the pressure. You were trying to draw me back. Let me draw this back. Dexamethasone, 6 times stronger than prednisone, something I definitely needed. I was heading to a bad place without it. However, when you're on this drug, it is so unbelievably powerful and unbelievably overwhelming to your senses that you can forget about sleep. You can forget about your normal mental attitude, your normal mental state. And it was really a matter of daily gut checks to see where I was in this process of using this drug and maintaining sanity at the same time. Not justifying, what any of these nutballs do, because I think regardless of it's drugs, alcohol, whatever, at the end of the day, we have our own free will, and we have to have some willpower to be responsible for our actions. But certainly, if somebody's going through a simple process like sinus surgery, and you end up on this very, very potent steroid that is very much mood altering and very hard to not only start but to stop, and I am not isolated here. If you look at some of these numbers, it's crazy. 25% of the women in the nation are on some kind of antidepressant or another. Over 50% of the population is having 2 or more prescription drugs all the time. So, the nexus I'm trying to draw here is we're not too far removed from having everything that we do, everything that's prescribed to us on a little bitty card so that we can be plugged into the healthcare system. And I don't see a very many steps before you go to purchase your little AR-15 or your AK or whatever the case is, and they're doing the check and they say, oh look, this guy's on dexamethasone. You can't have it because it's been known to create mood swings, and we're just trying to save the children. So go ahead. Yeah, that was my point there.
Oh yeah. I think that.
Hold on, I gotta go take some dexamethasone. I'll be right back.
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, if they can, find different people for different reasons selectively to go after and to deny them the rights to firearm ownership, or maybe anything else that would take your ability to make legal decisions on your behalf out of your custody, then there's always going to be people in government and government in general that would like more power. I mean, that's just that's the reality always.
No doubt. And the other reality is the more power that they take illegally, because I consider all power usurped from the Constitution to be illegal, the worse things get, Doug Owen. Look where we're at.
Or get a more realistic scenario that's happening all the time is that you get into a custody battle, and then that is used against you in.
Brother Doug, let me ask you this. I don't want to cut you off, but I always like to hear what you have to say. But you're getting a little watery on me. Are you? Is your connection good there, buddy?
Yeah, I hear you fine. You're good on this end.
All right. Well, you're tin canning it to me here.
I don't know. You sound good to me, though.
No, how do you sound in your headset?
I sound good in my headset.
Well, I'm just going to shut up and drive on.
Yeah, but I mean, you bring up a great point, though. The question is, what rights, if there are such a thing in the 21st century here in the United States of America, pretty much everything has been trivialized to the point where we have privileges that people believe are rights. We should have a right to the internet. We should have a right to water. And who am I to say that you shouldn't drink water? I mean, it sounds horrible, right? How can you not have a right to water? But when you really look at what that is being used to do in, by globalists and by bodies like the United Nations, when you start to really peel that onion back,
right.
Those rights and those properties being taken away from sovereign individuals and given to the state through eminent domain and a variety of vehicles, bad news usually, because the government takes way worse care of things than people would. Generally, people, unless they're in a panicky, crazy situation and desperate, usually people will do the right thing. In general, generally people will do the right thing. So I have more faith because, honestly, it's those same people that will just find their way to power. The same statistically driven people or same types of people are going to be in positions of power and abusing it in the exact same way. So when people say, well, in the private sector it's better, it's just different.
Yeah, you there? Are you there?
Yeah, I hear you. You're good, man.
All right.
You sound good.
No, I hear you. And another thing is, look at the cream of the crop, right, in D.C. And what you see is a group of people that will placate. Oh man, who will, let's call it what it is, who will whore themselves out,
right,
in order to maintain power, right? And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's to the constituency or if it's to special interest. It's to whoever's in front of them. They're the ultimate yes men. If they're going to look good and they're going to get their 15th term by giving out money that the country doesn't have in the form of 48 million people on food stamps, or you name the other social program, it doesn't matter if we can pay for it or not. Who cares? $17 trillion in national debt. They'll do it to look good in that moment. But when it comes time to bail out banks, the same ones they claim that they're railing against and they're trying to rein in, well, they really know where their butter is bred, so they'll go ahead and just stab their constituency in the back in order to save their own political future by bailing out the big special money interest. So it isn't like you have a government that is serving the people at any point. You're not serving the nation by throwing it into debt and giving away trinkets to a very select few. You're not even robbing from the middle class. You're robbing from the future in order to give it to a select few now. And you don't have a nation that is represented by people who serve the people if they're jumping in on board bailouts and jumping in on board weak, meaningless legislation to rein in the financial industry. At no point, let me put it this way. At what point does government serve the people on a federal level at all in this country? And
but how can you expect them to? I mean, let's look at Michael Bloomberg. He's a very overt case, or he's somebody who spent more money out of his personal coffer to get himself elected than he would ever make in his term as the New York City mayor, right? Yeah. So let's think about the cost-benefit analysis. If you're not going to make money from your salary, then how are you going to make money? Or if money's not the issue, then what kind of ego glory hound are you? What is driving you? Is it this passion that you have deep down inside because you love the city? And if you believe that, I got some stuff that we can sell you, after the show. Meet me. We'll talk in an alley. But, so what do people expect? When you look at Barack Obama or Mitt Romney or any of these clowns, okay, who pays for all of the propaganda that you're fed? And just think about this. Think about the selective message, how much thought and time and effort goes into creating a message that you're supposed to believe. I mean, for God's sakes, you have to be pretty gullible to buy in. And I was gullible when I was young. When I was 19 years old, I was pretty gullible. I'd buy into just about anything. But when you're 35 years old and you're still waving flags and putting bumper stickers on for that guy, you're like, how can you even be upset? How can you expect him to do anything for you? He doesn't respect you because you're not putting him into office. All of the corporate sponsors that he has, he's going to serve those people. You're just along for the ride to wave flags and go to the parade and get
but that is kind of not true in one respect, or in a few respects actually. I mean, if we break it down, Doug, and if you look at the red team and you look at the blue team, right, and you look at the camps that fall under those umbrellas, the same folks who are go out and they'll put an Obama bumper sticker on, or they'll put on a whatever neocon flavor of the week on their car, and they feel like they're part of that team. They certainly do have very much a vested interest, at least they believe so, a very selfish interest in that team coming into power. And regardless if you want to hear this or not, if you look at the blue team, it is social welfare programs. That is why most of the country is on one, right? That is why the number of people who are on social welfare programs parity the number of people that voted for the current blue team administration and fall into that same camp. However, before you think I'm some kind of dyed-in-the-wool conservative neocon talk show host, listen to this. The red team has every bit as much of selfish vested interest in getting in there. If you don't believe me, look at the national debt. Look at what the Federal Reserve's doing. These are all fantasies for these neocons, for the people who consider themselves red state neocons. Why? Because they don't care about the fate of the country any more than the welfare folk, right? They don't care. They just want theirs. So if
it's
they
corporate welfare, and it's actually more.
But it isn't just corporate. It isn't just corporate. It's this is the crowd that I work with every day. These are the folks that have $100,000 in their 401k, and they're pissed off because in 2008 it went to $50,000. But they're happy because the Federal Reserve's loading the nation up on debt, and now they're seeing it back to $80,000 or $90,000. That is selfish reasoning for keeping the status quo the way it is.
Sure.
They don't give a crap, Doug. They don't give a crap that we're spending our future in oblivion, that we're going to run into a brick wall that is a financial Armageddon, as I like to say. So there is very selfish reasons on the red team. There's very selfish reasons on the blue team, and I believe this is what blinds and dazes the folks in order to to get them to vote for one team or another.
Yeah,
but,
well, I mean, beyond that, I mean, we all vote for team state, and we pay our taxes, and we think that it's
and you're right.
And,
You're right when you say when you say they are truly working for special financial interests, because at the end of the day, when what hits the fan and markets are plummeting and banks are failing, what happens? They come together, they hold hands, and they decide, yep, we're going to bail these companies out because they're our bread and butter. It's the exact same thing when we go to war. They hold hands, they pull the pin, whatever kind of stupid metaphor you want to use. They come together and screw the nation is what they do. So at those times, when it's time to screw us en masse, there is no party system. They're both working for the same team.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like what's happening in Deutschland. Did you hear about what the Dutch king has done? Now in the fine classic Dutch welfare state, which, I mean, when you look at the Dutch, they really did spur apartheid. They are the original enslavers, and they've done quite well for themselves there. Belgium and Amsterdam, all of those areas are ripe with people that have been basically living off the state for a long, long time. Well,
sure.
On this, yesterday, this came out, a Raw story. The Dutch government heralded the end of the welfare state on Tuesday as the fifth largest Eurozone economy presented an austerity-driven budget for 2014. So austerity comes to Brussels. Dutch king tells citizens to take responsibility as they implement austerity. This is the same exact thing that they're telling the Greeks. Stop. You are the ones that are at fault. And it's only a matter of time before you hear that rhetoric from the U.S. government, the Federal Reserve, or others, that you stupid fat Americans, you are to blame. Take responsibility for this country and these wars that you've allowed. It might be a little bit different here because, the United States is the military engine of this, new world order, and it has...
it's still coming here. It's still, I mean, at least the talk of hard austerity and the hard choices. And see, this is, look, America, listen to me when I tell you this. I and Doug, I know you and others have been talking since 2008. They want you to they need you to forget. They need you to forget what led to massive amounts of debt. They need you to forget what led to massive unemployment, what led to massive electronic bread lines. They need you to forget that. And we're doing it. We're doing it for them. How do I know this? A headline right here. Only 27% of the people of this country know what QE, quantitative easing, is. We are going to forget what brought us here to this dance, and when it goes to hell in a handbasket again, we will be the ones.
People have no idea, and even I hear people in alternative media talk about derivatives, and they have no idea. I only have a cursory understanding of economics, macroeconomics, and what these different instruments really are. And I would say that I know more than a huge contingent of
absolutely.
Americans. And that's because I read, and that's because I actually want to
because
know.
You care. You give a crap.
Well, I think that it's all about being a stakeholder, isn't it? People that care about the country, people that stand to lose, they are going to care a little bit more. no matter what it is. And that's why people stay somewhat enslaved to the system, right?
That's
because
right.
You want the government to protect your property if you own property. If you don't own property, you probably don't care at all whether or not the government. You're more prone to be an anarchist if those things are maybe. Or not to bang anarchist. I'm actually an anarcho-capitalist, but it's somebody that's not going to appreciate that. That's my point that I'm trying to articulate here.
No, I agree, and I feel bad that I keep trying to cut you off, but you prove my point there. That you talk about people with skin in the game, and I'm paraphrasing here. Mm-hmm. That's the problem. We forgot. We've been dumbed down. We've been miseducated to the point that we don't understand what having skin in the game is really all about, because you have skin in the game if you're getting a $400 a month check to put food on your table. You have skin in the game if you're relying on the Dow Jones to go up 10% this year, and that's your focus. That's the wrong kind of skin in the game, because what we're building out is a broader chasm between the haves and the have-nots, and eventually all of the wealth will end up in this very small minority, and it isn't even 1%. That's even a misnomer. This very, very tiny minority are going to end up with all the wealth in the land, and everybody, regardless if you're a neocon holding on to $100K in your retirement, or watching your property value, you think it's rising a little bit, or if you're in the welfare class or the under middle class or the ever growing class that has fallen into poverty, watching your dollar of a government check go less and less at the grocery store. Everybody is going to be affected at the end of the day, but it isn't going to be in any kind of glorious manner if we just keep pushing forward with what we think is our skin in the game. We have our skin in the game. It's our neck. And as a nation, we're all going to feel this boot come down on it.
Well, yeah, exactly. But if you've got money in one of these systems, these mechanisms, you may want to use the government to protect it. It brings me to this clip. This is something that's happening in the background, and there's a lot of things to attribute to Florida besides the herpy having monkeys that are on the loose there. But yeah, you hear about those feral monkeys. I talked about that on my podcast, but it's funny. There's feral monkeys that have herpes, and they become quite an epidemic in Florida, and it just goes into
they also have, what are they, pythons that are Burmese pythons? But Florida's turning into another country.
It's pretty cool. Yeah. I think it makes it more...
Herpes-laden monkeys.
It makes it more interesting, I don't know. I mean, not to say that that's a good thing.
Monkeys freak me out. I'm not going to lie to you. Monkeys are bizarre creatures to me. And ever since the lady had her face ripped off and the YouTube audio was you remember that?
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
It was horrifying. Travis, can somebody get a gun and shoot him? Travis has ripped my friend's face off. You remember that?
Man, yeah. Yeah, it's pretty gross. It's pretty
Chimps
horrific. Yeah.
They're like the strength of 50 men. I'm exaggerating, but they're devastating power.
Crazy strong. Yeah.
Travis!
Yeah. Fortunately, I mean, they just don't look that big. You underestimate the awesome power. They can just rip your arm off or just slash your face off. And you're like, it's just a little monkey. Oh, hi, monkey. Yeah. There was a video that came out. I don't know if you saw this, but this guy was messing with a beaver in Russia. A beaver. And that thing got upset, and it came after him. He was videotaping this, and it bit him in his leg, and it hit an artery, and the guy died.
Oh, yeah. Well,
beaver death. So talk about statistics. I don't know how many beaver deaths there are in Russia every year from, drunk, vodka-bound
okay, listen. How?
Guys getting
artery. Let's see. Beaver. Maybe on the big side, 50 pounds, right? And stand and can climb up on you like you were an aspen tree.
But you look at it, you underestimate it. You don't think he's very fast. They look like they're just kind of somewhat docile. You're like, oh, he's a little beaver, and then that thing just jumps on you from 5 feet away. You're like, ah!
Come on, man.
No, it's real. It's absolutely real. There's a video. You can watch it.
A 5-foot leaping beaver.
I know, he doesn't leap. He just catches the guy off guard because the guy hears him. He starts hissing. He doesn't think that the beaver's going to do anything, You don't expect a beaver to start attacking you. You're like, oh, look, it's a beaver. Because you think that their gig is to, chop down trees, build dams, hang out, do funny commercials on TV. And then the reality that it is It is a vicious, wild animal sets
it's not
in.
Vicious. Stop. It's not. It's not
absolutely vicious. You
it was provoked. It was provoked.
That you taunt any animal. You know, I
That's
mean,
right.
you look at a dog. I mean, dogs kill people all the time. And how many Americans have dogs? We all have dogs, but dogs kill people every day.
34 a year, more than mass shooting. And if you taunt little Pebbles, the Doom dog, enough, she's gonna yelp and she's gonna attack. But beavers, to say they're vicious. Now a chimp is vicious.
He might have, well, what if he has rabies? Then he becomes vicious.
Well, then he becomes a pair of gloves. Yeah. Listen, I grew up in Montana, and I'm gonna tell a story. It might make people a little upset. But when I was growing up, way back in the yesteryear machine, I grew up in Butte, Montana. And for those of you who want to Google Butte, Montana, it at one time was the copper capital of the world. Well, when I was growing up, the mine shut down, and people, they didn't have jobs. So a lot of people were into trapping. I grew up in Montana, a lot of rendezvous and things like that. Jim Bridger, John Coulter, back in the Mountain Man days. So I was kind of infatuated with that. I became friends with a miner who was laid off, and he taught me how to trap. And so we would trap beavers, muskrats, fox, coyote. And, I would go with him just to learn how to do it. But that's how he fed his family. Hundreds of coyotes, hundreds of fox a year, and scores of beaver and muskrats. And I'm telling you something, Doug Owen. You know what? I can't even say this in all fairness, because every beaver, when you trap it, usually it's in a conibear type trap, which is a square trap they swim in. Snap. That's it. It breaks their back. They're done. It kills them instantly. So I guess I never had an encounter with a pissed off beaver. Although I did have a muskrat attack me once because it was stuck in a leg hold trap, and the guideline that's supposed to drown them instantly failed, and it was alive when I came upon it, and it jumped out and hissed at me. However, at no point was I as terrified of that angry leg-trapped muskrat than I am of a crazy castrating chimpanzee.
Well, properly so.
Yeah, bring us back to the future now.
All right.
Thank God, my trapping days are over.
Yeah, that's pretty mountain man-ish right there, my friend. That's pretty.
And some people are going to be mad. Even my youngest brother, he's only 26 years old. He thinks I'm some kind of barbarian because I did this. But you know what? It bought me a 1967 Galaxy 500. It put gas in that car. It was beer money for the weekends. It's what we did as kids. We had jobs, 13, 14 years old. So, although I didn't have a car until I was 15, but you get my point. We did what we had to do in order to make a living. And if it was facing down an angered muskrat, then that was my job.
Well, you got to do what you got to do, man. I'm not here to judge you.
I feel judged right now.
Not by me. Maybe by yourself. You're thinking.
Don't judge the doom, man. It's part of my life.
That is kind of doomy, though.
It is.
Just
it
whacking
was.
Animals. I'll tell you one time about a chinchilla farm. There's a crazy story, but not tonight. Not tonight. Well, so we'll tease that for another night.
Listen, I want to get to my list. You have organic stuff. I'm looking at the clock right now. We are holding it to an hour tonight, and I'll say this to the DoomCast listeners. I get the emails. I've seen the comments where some people think it's not long enough. Some people think it's too long. So, Doug, I think an hour is about right at this point. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, if we haven't entertained you, turn it off after 10 minutes. We just have to, hit those people. I think that's the difference between the podcast type people that listen, that want something on the way to the commute, and the people that want a condensed 3-minute rant. And so, YouTube, we get plenty of people that listen to the podcast, and on my podcast, your other show, that listen exclusively through that. And I think there's some benefit to having it on the platform because, even though it's audio only, it's still
an hour time is basically 2 hours of internet radio. Because there's no commercials here, we don't stop, there's no breaks. So this is tantamount. I believe on my program we're about on Rinse Radio about 45 minutes, or give or take, of actual talk time. But you're always getting cut off by break, and you're always going back in from a break. Kind of off track from where you left off beforehand. So I like the format. I like the hour. And until this is our job, Doug Owen, we don't have to get up at 6 a.m. and go do something else. I like an hour. I did say at the beginning of the program we're going to do DC shooting. Question on Syria, and I'm going to have to make it fast because we have about 6 minutes left. this is a question I have for you, Doug, and the Doomers out there. Is it just me, or has the entire script on on Syria been flipped? And I don't mean the war, right? The excuse me, the launching of a strike. I'm talking about the narrative entirely, because it was just a year ago when, man, nobody would talk about Assad remaining in power. He had to go. As part of any deal, he had to go. His regime had to fail. And it didn't matter, not just in the U.S., but even Russia, even France, even Britain, everybody was saying Assad had to go. Now, all contingency plans are based on Assad remaining president. Did they just give up on this notion? I mean, look, we were a hair's breadth. We were a John Kerry misstatement away from launching Tomahawk cruise missiles into this country, destabilize and get rid of Assad. Now everything has changed. He's got to stay in power.
Or has it? Or has it? Charlie McGrath.
That's the question, I guess. That's the question. Do you find that odd? That's my question. Don't you find it odd that this was Adolf Hitler, Saddam Hussein, Mussolini, Pol Pot, all tied into one 6 weeks ago? And now he's got to stay in power in order to facilitate the Russian/UN/America on board, getting rid of his chemical weapons, and the conversation is completely void of Assad must go.
Well, I obviously the U.S. has used biological weapons. We turn a blind eye to the fact that our good friend Israel has plenty of them, up to 80 nukes that just came out. It's been quantified. They have nuclear weapons. We all knew it. It's not a big shocker to most of the people listening to the Doomcast. But, yeah, I mean, why did they have VX sarin gas? Well, why? Yeah. Oh, well, it's an insurance policy as to not be invaded. You can only expect Syria to want these weapons to protect themselves. So the whole situation has changed now, and it goes back into my theory that they're using this to show that there is a new world order resolve for global government, and they can come together and bring peace if we just allow the blue helmets on the ground to solidify everything. I still think that the Iraq scenario can play out, and they're moving everything forward, regardless of how much the media and maybe even people like ourselves portray Barack Obama as not knowing what he's doing. The people that control him absolutely do. And now there has been this meeting planned with Vladimir Putin and Iran, and guess what? They want the sanctions lifted, and they're willing to shut down their nuclear plant. So that is a huge shift, and it's going to be interesting to see what Bibi and the rest of the neocon warhawks do about this change of heart, and in this new age of diplomacy, can they embrace peace, and is that going to be the new narrative for the new world order? Now, it was just a few weeks ago that Joe Biden said this, and we played it.
The affirmative task we have now is to actually create a new world order.
So, by hook or by crook, is it a flank? Things aren't always as they seem, and we're definitely in transition. We know what the end game is for the Middle East. The question is, how do they get there? And what's the timetable? Has the plan changed? But I don't think it's changed at all. I think that the same goal is there. Energy security for Europe, isolation of China and Russia, continuing to be a counter to what's happening, and that is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, continuing to use military force to institute the Bretton Woods system. All of those things are still game on. None of that's changed. So how do we get there? And I think that they're just using different tactics and now using the world government, this affirmative action, to bring about this. And Michael Hayden, former NSA goon and shill, that said that, yes, the problem with the internet is that we have anonymity. People can go on the internet with, and he's getting some headlines this week out of RT and others, even, in the left, sphere, alternate and whatnot, for these comments about, the Orwellian takeover of the internet. And he's one of these people that said, that the last decade was a war paradigm. everything that was done under the prospect of war, and that this was shifting. And, I don't know if the guy, knows really what's going on, and you would think that if he's been in one of these, really powerful positions, that he probably has a few flies on the wall. But, so I don't think that it's changed, Charlie. I just think that they've shifted the narrative.
Well, I like your perspective, and it makes sense to me, especially what you started out with, which is if we show that this new world order can come together and end a crisis like Syria that was on the brink. Man, it was on the brink, and we came together and ended it. The only problem with that is one of the nations that are going to be isolated, Russia, is the key player in it. But that certainly doesn't mean that
that's to say that they're not on board or getting paid
sure,
off.
Yeah, exactly. But we could see that play out on the financial side as well, because the financial collapse, the financial implosion is far more devastating and as devastating for the people of the world as these global conflicts are. About the only thing that can outpace it is an all-out nuclear world war. But certainly, if we all are led into financial Armageddon together, and then we look up and we have the Schaubles and the Merkels and these juggernauts of the financial world together, holding hands, saying we have the solution, just give us control of everything, and we'll make sure you have bread and circus. Yeah, sure, why not? I certainly could see this as playing out as let them go into just abject misery, and we'll give them a little taste of joy, and they will bow and worship us as a deity. Let me get into, it's an hour and 1 minute, so let's, I want to read just a few comments, because they left about 40 or so on last DoomCast.
Wow.
Again, thanks for all the support, guys. This is from James Myth 555, and I'm just going to pick these randomly. Of course, they're all going to be glowing about me and Doug Owen. Thank you for your show. I enjoy the topic and chemistry. Since most people I know have no interest in any real news, it's nice hearing people talking about issues that matter and really affect us. I think it is sad how most people want to just stay uninformed, no matter how serious at times and news is. Keep up the great work. That was a really great comment. That was the latest, just posted yesterday. And then there's a smattering, and I want to make sure we're not just doing awesome comments about the program. But this is from Bert Wiedemeyer, and it's like doom's been predicted since 2008 and early Y2K. Still hasn't happened. I'm tired of waiting. Bring it on. I'm not really sure if that's a slam on us as talking about doom, or if it's just waiting for this to happen.
And frustration, I think.
Yeah,
a lot of people have kind of bought into this, and I'll tell a quick story. I know we're running short here. I've got about 58 minutes. I think we got a few here, but real quickly, Y2K Bob, perfect example. Guy that was freaked out about Y2K, took all of his savings, built a bunker, bought tons of storable dry food, ended up bankrupting because Y2K didn't happen, right. And all of the stuff that he had stashed and all of the credit that he had leaned, that he had put himself, or debt he'd put himself into, that pain far outweighed what he anticipated. So, if you think that everything's about to blow up and it's a foregone conclusion, the reality is that it might even be scarier if things just continue as horribly as they are. I think a lot of people are at that point where you're like, this cannot continue. It's just so bad. It's just so stupid. Please,
that's what I would
let
say.
It end. Let it end.
Well, you know what? And it goes to the question we put out there last week, which nobody really answered.
No more twerking. No more Miley Cyrus. Can't stand it.
Twerking isn't so bad. Yeah. Sorry, it's a little edgy here on the DoomCast tonight. But to Bert, who's saying doom is predicted since 2008, what I would say to somebody, and I do quite often, is, first I shake them by the shoulders a little and I say, seriously, it's time to wake up. Look at the world, even pre-2008 collapse. So look at the world July 2008 compared to now. Look at the world 2000 before 9/11 and now. And tell me we haven't seen a level of decay and collapse already, let alone predicting, what is most assuredly to come, which is pain and suffering to usher in the aforementioned New World Order, Doug.
Yeah, well, the Bank of International Settlements, the head central bank of central banks, issued a pretty stern warning, and we haven't seen this kind of, I think, wording since probably 2007. Worldwide credit excess worse than pre-global financial crisis. Now, of course, this could be agenda-driven. And the Bank of International Settlements, they've had a long history of funding Nazis and wars and bringing about Bretton Woods, the World Bank, and they came out of all of that. So, take it for granted, or consider the source. So the Swiss-based bank that's been pretty, I think, honest thus far has talked about these high-risk instruments, and they've only become more complex, and debt has only increased. So if the idea was to bail out the banks and the financial sector to create more security and less leveraging and less...
With the promise, of course, to cut you off, but with the promise of re-regulating or regulating the financial industry. As you said, if that was their goal, wow, what an abject, miserable
The SEC
failure.
was looking at porn and doing other nefarious things.
Right.
Hanging out with Bernie Madoff's niece.
Yep. That's exactly what they were doing.
I'm not just saying that tongue in cheek. That's exactly what happened. So
that's exactly what they were doing, them sons of you-know-whats. Today, the Fed downgraded the outlook for this economy as we reach all-time highs on the Dow Jones. So, if you're sick of hearing, I hear this too. It is kind of like battle fatigue, right? People have battle fatigue from waiting for the collapse. Well, unfortunately, we did not experience to this point an all-out collapse that everybody's going to recognize. Why? Well, because we went from $9 trillion to $17 trillion of debt, and a lot of that is manifesting itself in all-time student debt height, all-time highs in credit card debt, personal debt starting to soar again. So as long as you have credit line, guess what? You're feeling like things are kind of normal. You can go out to eat, you can go out and consume in this economy. When all that's taken away is when some of this pain is going to be felt, Doug. And so battle fatigue, I get it. I talk on the radio or my website almost every single day, so I understand that. But once in a while, take a step back and look at where we are and how far we have fallen in a fairly short period of time.
Well, I think people just feel, a lot of them, helpless. And that's the point, is that you're trying to drive home, is that there are options and things that you can do for yourself and your family that will put you in a pole position. If and when, and I think it's just a matter of when, I agree, that we see financial doom.
I agree.
And whether it hits you or not. Depends on where you are. That's what country you live in. If you're in Cyprus, if you were in Greece, if you're in Italy, if you're in Spain, if you're invested in Poland, you're having your pension taken away from you. If you're in those countries, it's a big deal. That hasn't hit the shores of the United States, and it hasn't hit Americans to the point where, and many that have heeded the warning just don't know how to really benefit, because a lot of times they just buy gold or other things that are recommended to them, and those things themselves don't necessarily make you rich. Just because you buy an ounce of gold, it might not go up for quite a while. So people do feel kind of, I think, disillusioned. And when you look at how many people have been improperly geared for the future by getting maybe useless degrees that are for jobs that just no longer exist, you're going to feel like it's the end of the world. People always have, though, and this is the thing. It's real. It's doom for those individuals, and the question is, not whether, but if you can weather through that. Or, many people, do quite well during those times. So the question is,
see, that's where we part ways, buddy. That's where, and not saying everybody's going to be destitute and living under a bridge, but I wholeheartedly believe, and wait for it as long as you want. Don't wait for it. Believe it or don't believe it. I think part of the New World Order agenda, just like we see this holding hands coming together on on military and international and issues as well as conflict. I do believe we're going to be led as a planet into just a carnage financially to where everybody's going to be affected and everybody is going to see a reduction in their standard of living. And I'm not talking about going from upper middle to middle class. I'm talking about real pain and suffering because we are so connected. Because we are going to feel the pain of those who have nothing, even if we have everything, because we live in the exact same economy that is dominated by one very thin layer of power in Washington D.C. So if it affects the dollar, it's going to affect everybody. Let me. And I'm not looking for debate on that because we did that last week a little bit. But let me get a couple more comments, and then you can take us out of. We could put DC-8 in the books. We could put it in the can. Enjoyed the show. Oh, this one I like. This one I love. I want everybody to listen close here. Enjoy the show, guys. Great work, Doug. Let Charlie talk without interrupting him so much.
Sorry. My bad.
That's all right.
My bad.
That's right. I just read that because there was one on there last week that said, Charlie, why don't you let Doug talk once in a while? So that we get them both ways. So found out about Charlie on RT interview, subbed. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Get new license plates. Getting new license plates. Doomer. That's your catchphrase, Doug.
Nice.
Yeah. So great comments. A bunch of them this week. I really appreciate it. And guys, keep the comments coming. Even if we don't answer them all or read them on air or during the program, I guarantee you, between me and Doug, we read them all.
Yeah, and last week we put the ringtone into the YouTube video, correct? I know it's
that's right.
Yeah, so, and I've got to get that list. I haven't forgot about that either. So, I mean, if you send us stuff and you talk to us, and you can text us. There's a text line 512-222-3067. I'll relay those voice or text messages to Charlie here as well, and so it's been a great response, and I like hearing from people, and it gives us, something always to consider.
I like it. We read them, and they're becoming part of the program every week. So keep them coming.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, we're out of here.
Thanks, Doug Owen.
Thank you, Charlie McGrath. DoomCast number 8 in the books. We'll do it again next week, Wednesday, 8:30-ish p.m. in the evening, Central Standard Time. Till then, take care.
And